I thank the Centre. I thank the committee. I thank all those who authored the essays.
Hi there, Carl Anthony Brown with you. Welcome to the channel. Feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Here we are again, but this time on a very sad note. We say goodbye to a statesman. Guyana has lost a great son of the soil. And indeed he was, Sir Shridath Ramphal. The family of Sir Shridath Sonny Ramphal is deeply saddened to announce his peaceful passing on 30th August 2024, surrounded by his children. Sir Shridath, born on October 3rd, 1928 in New Amsterdam, British Guyana, then now Guyana, was a towering figure in international diplomacy and a cherished elder statesman of the Commonwealth and the Caribbean. And there's more to this great statesman. I must say how saddened we all are. The little I know of Sir Shridath was when I grew up hearing about him, but even more when he celebrated his 80th birthday in Georgetown, Guyana, which was hosted by Mr. Arif Ali, and of course, it was the launch of the book by Sir Shridath, and it was a pleasure being there. He was a dynamic individual. Of course, at that presentation and the launch of his book were great people. I can recall Ian MacDonald, the late Professor Rex Nettleford, and of course, Arif Ali, the great publisher. But a little bit more about Sir Shridath. On his birthday, he was humble. When Sir Shridath spoke and he gave the thank you to say how much he appreciated all, it was ever so wonderful. And he will be greatly missed. His family, I extend my condolences. But looking back on that day that Sir Shridath spoke, how else could I not share this with you and have him be a part of us as we say goodbye to him? Sir Shridath Ramphal.
Most immediately, of course, how do I respond to Ian and to Rex? I could not have wished for a better mix of erudition and friendship. And I shall cherish what they have said as a kind of oral annex to this book. Rex, of course, as you have heard, is one of the book's essayists. And so my gratitude to him is doubled. But it is already so large and in so many contexts that doubling may overwhelm him. I treasure, Rex, what you have written in the book, and I treasure what you have said tonight. Your sentiments come to me from my wider West Indian home, and I could not have wished for more. To Ian, my thanks are manifold. I thank him, as I know many of you do, for carrying a lantern of enlightenment in the darkest night, and for reminding us all by his civility and his sense of balance in all things, of the highest values toward which all Guyanese and West Indians must constantly reach. Every society needs an Ian MacDonald. That he should have done the honors tonight enhances this occasion. Like me, Ian and Rex have only very shortly seen the book. Such are the mysteries of publishing. But I do not need to see more of it to be overjoyed with it. Gratitude, of course, to the Ramphal Centre in the UK for this festschrift. It was magnanimous in conception. It is noble in execution. I can praise it, for it is not my work. It is only about my work. And I praise it for the undertaking, not for the judgments. No one could have wished for more from his peers than this book. This book, which is veritably, as Ian said, indicated, half a biography. I thank the Centre. I thank the committee. I thank all those who authored the essays. And I do that all from a very full heart. And I thank the publisher. I thank Hansen. I thank its managing director, Arif Ali, for what I'm sure, what I know you all agree, is a superb professional product. Arif, as he's told you, is from Guyana. But he's probably better known to the West Indian diaspora in Britain than he is to his compatriots here. He told you, when I first went to London as Secretary General in 1975, I became acquainted with Arif Ali. Arif was then the editor of a struggling weekly newspaper called West Indian World, which served, and I really mean served, the West Indian community in London and beyond London. Served the community and served its many causes. I counted him then a friend of Commonwealth causes as well. And we needed that friendship. And Arif Ali still serves those causes. But, as can be seen from this publication, launched here at Carifesta, and the many other publications that you may not have seen, that he has launched during this festival. He is now, under the Hansen imprint, a quite substantial publisher. But he is still serving the region, serving it here, serving it abroad. I believe it was his idea that there should be a pre-launch of this book here in Guyana during Carifesta. What a marvelous idea. I could not be happier that the committee shared his enthusiasm and joined him in sponsoring this launch today. I hope, and I know all of you will hope, that Hansen goes on from strength to strength, contributing to the building up of Caribbean publishing, which is, let us be aware, which is already holding its own at the highest level of production. Thank you, Arif. As you have heard and politely not made much of, This book is being launched in London on my 80th birthday, which is the 3rd of October. It's being launched then by the committee of the Ramphal Centre, appropriately enough, in the headquarters of the Commonwealth Secretariat at Marlborough House. But it is appropriate too, I think, and I believe you agree, that it is being pre-launched here in Guyana. And you know, there are some very special reasons why that is a good thing. The book's essays really cover 25 years of my life, 25 years of my work at the Commonwealth and my work in the world. But before that time, and very relevant to it, was what I regard as a decade of preparation here in Guyana and in the Caribbean. And I say to you with absolute conviction, certainty, that without that decade here, those years of which this book speaks could not, would not have happened. That decade here, between 1965 and 1975, which I began as Attorney General and ended as Foreign Minister, was absolutely critical to everything about which this book speaks, although it does not speak of those 10 years. They were extraordinarily opportune years in my life. A decade which allowed me to play a central role, first of all in drafting Guyana's independence constitution, the constitution, of course, which did change when I left, and in relaunching the Caribbean project. Relaunching the Caribbean project after the disaster of the Federation's collapse. Relaunching it with the initiation of CARIFTA in 1965. How long ago that seems now. And helping the process from CARIFTA to community. And I'm so pleased that Edward Carrington is here, because he lived through some of those years with me, and I applaud him for his stamina in continuing. It was a decade in which I was privileged to lead for the Caribbean in the trade regime negotiations of the Lomé Convention. A regime, let us remember, that lasted for 25 years. It was a decade that was to culminate in the Georgetown Accord of 1975, establishing the ACP, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific group of countries, the largest single grouping within the developing world. Fact which we tend to forget these days. It was a decade, of course, in which Guyana molded a foreign policy that wanted to respect both for its content and for its leadership. High in this was our espousal of non-alignment. Espousal of non-alignment as the intellectual foundation of our internationalism. And of course, in that context, the rather daring enterprise of hosting the the non-aligned foreign ministers meeting in 1972, of which the edifice in which we ought to have been this evening, the Umanayana, is such a symbol. That meeting, it needs to be remembered, actually saved this global movement of non-alignment from the fragmentation that was about to overwhelm it over the seating of Cambodia and the recognition of the People's Revolutionary Government of North Vietnam. Names, things that are of a distant past. But that meeting in Georgetown actually changed that particular course in history. And it was Guyana's brokerage that paved the way to consensus. It was altogether an occasion of honor, commemorated still by the heads of the founding fathers of the movement in Company Park Gardens, to which I gather they have been returned. It was a decade of our prominence in rejection of a two-China policy at the UN, and of our similar leadership of the breaking of the diplomatic embargo against Cuba, with the joint recognition by Guyana, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados acting together in a principled act of internationalism that Cuba has never, ever forgotten. It was a time of Caribbean leadership in the Third World's demand for a new international economic order. I say all this to remind you what that decade of preparation was like. It was a decade that saw Guyana's frontline solidarity with the ANC in the anti-apartheid struggle, saw our presidency, the first presidency of the Council for Namibia, and the bull-forered greenheart logs that stand proudly outside Umanayana were dedicated on the occasion of that first meeting of the Council of Namibia outside New York, here in Georgetown. Testimony to the meeting here. Now, at the core of that decade of activism internationally, and it was literally that, at its core was Caribbean solidarity. Caribbean solidarity as we worked with the region to build CARICOM. Efforts acknowledged, I would assert, in the Secretary General's presence, efforts acknowledged in the siting of the CARICOM Secretariat in Georgetown. And of course, capping that decade was the first CARIFESTA. Returning here now, but capping that decade then. And as Rex said, CARIFESTA is so important. Allow me the indulgence of reminding you that nearly 3 centuries ago, in 1722, Pierre Labat, the French Dominican monk who lived in Martinique at the end of the 17th century, in a quite lyrical passage in his Nouveau Voyage aux Îles de l'Amérique, writing of his travels among the islands of the Caribbean, 1722, invoked a vision of Caribbean identity and destiny, which I believe remains valid to this day, as I think Carifesta 10 is confirming. I have traveled, he wrote, everywhere in your Sea of the Caribbean, from Haiti to Barbados, to Martinique and Guadeloupe, and I know what I am speaking about. You are all together in the same boat, sailing on the same uncertain sea, citizenship and race unimportant. Feeble little labels compared to the message that my spirit brings to me. That of the predicament which history has imposed on you. I saw it first in the dance, the meringue in Haiti, the begin in Martinique, and today I hear De Mon Noril Mort, the echo of calypsos from Trinidad, Jamaica, St. Lucia, Antigua, Dominica, and the legendary Guyana. It is no accident that the sea, which separates your lands, makes no difference to the rhythm of your bodies. The rhythms of history, as Gordon Lewis later called them. So it was a glorious decade in Guyana's regional and international life. Less so at the domestic level, which was one of great turbulence. And while I was actively involved in its evolution, the evolution of that external dimension, the political credit for it must lie with the then Prime Minister, Forbes Burnham. I was particularly pleased, as many of you must have been, to learn recently of the parliamentary resolution carried unanimously in recognition of his work and place in Guyana's history. A necessary act of healing in Guyana's body politic. The policy frameworks of that decade in the external area were erected under Burnham's watch. But they were erected in a progressive political environment that owed much to Cheddi Jagan's internationalism, and which therefore in the result made them, those external frameworks, made them actually a bipartisan product. They remain essentially unchanged today, despite changes of governments. They are a national credo. And it was a time, too, in the Caribbean of hopefulness. A time of reaching beyond our ready grasp. A time of experimentation not worn down by a sense of powerlessness. It was out of that decade that I went to London. And I have said all this to make the point that the work in London and beyond London, of which this book speaks, and speaks so generously, that work had been nurtured here in Guyana and in the wider Caribbean region. cane field, as David Debidine's wonderful verse said, the cane field was in Guyana, but the plantation was West Indies. It was as a Caribbean person, a Caribbean man, that I went forth to London, conditioned already to do whatever I did manage to do in the Commonwealth and in the world. The possibilities were enlarged by my West Indianness, that word of which Arif Ali is so fond. In saying thanks to the committee of the Ramphal Center, in saying thanks to Ian, to Rex, to Arif, to all of you who have come to share this moment with me, I say with humility but with considerable pride that what this book speaks of in the Commonwealth and the world was made here in Guyana and the Caribbean. Thank you for letting me say this.
And with such dynamic words from a great statesman, Sir Shridath Ramphal, I'd like to say goodbye to you. The funeral will take place at the Promenade Gardens in Georgetown, commencing at 1500 hours on Saturday, the 14th of September 2024. May his soul rest in peace. And with that, Carl Anthony Brown saying, it was a pleasure being with you. Look forward to hearing and being with you again. Keep in touch, as I always say. Peace out and catch you later.